So before we move on, I want to talk about the last video that I made. I noticed after watching it that the video camera piece started to get a little, I don't know, jumpy, and it was out of sync with the actual audio. So I'm not sure what happened there. I think I had too many applications open. So what I did is I closed all the applications that I didn't need, and hopefully this will help things out a little bit. Also, when watching that video, I noticed I was a little washed out from this big green wall behind me. So I didn't really notice that when Craig and I were recording together. And I think that's because him and I were side by side, and we were blocking out a lot of that green wall. And with just me here, you can see a lot more of that wall, which makes me look a little bit darker. So something to be thinking about when making your videos is picking a good background, because I actually have pretty good lighting here. The problem is the background. And I should change, but I'm stubborn and I don't feel like moving. So hopefully it's not too bad. All right, so I just want to point that out. Also, I wanted to point out that there was mention in one of the previous videos, or actually it might be the last video that Craig and I made together that you'll see at the end. We were talking about hotkeys, and that was something that I think is really important. Because you probably noticed that with the video that Craig and I made, there's some downtime from when we started the recording to when we actually started the instruction, and then when we were done with the instruction and when we stopped the recording. So what you can do is learn some of the hotkeys to start and stop the recordings. If you're using Screencast-O-Matic, which Craig will talk about that one later, that actually has a countdown. I think it works a little bit better with actually getting everything set up before you start recording. However, with Screencast-O-Matic, once you hit record, it starts recording. And I'm not sure if you can do a countdown or not. Craig will talk to you about that in his section. So learning the hotkeys for Screencast-O-Matic and other screencasting tools is really important, because now you'll notice with this video and all future videos, there will be no downtime between when the recording starts and when the instruction starts, as well as when the instruction ends and when the video ends. So I think it's good that you get to see the different examples of before we started using hotkeys and after we started using hotkeys. But I wanted to just point that out, so when you're creating your videos, you're incorporating those little tricks in there. And again, Craig will probably talk to you about that more in a future video. So let's actually get back to this content. So you've had an opportunity to discuss the purpose of flipped instruction with your partner and share it through Poll Everywhere. Now I want to talk to you about what Craig and I feel is the purpose of flipped instruction. And I think that as we review everyone's submissions for what they thought was the purpose, I think this is a common thing that's going to appear. And so what Craig and I discussed was that we believe the purpose of flipped instruction is to create a student-centered learning environment. And again, I think that if you were to reflect now on your discussion, it probably comes back to this. You want to take the time that you have with students, and rather than just be talking at them in the front of the class, you want to try to engage them in some active learning. And so if you look at the bottom of this slide, you can kind of see an example of that transition from what we call the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. And notice that what's on the board too is the homework is no longer practicing something that was taught in class, it's going on to the next piece of instruction. And that the big piece on the board is about the activity, because when students now come to class, it's about the activity that happens, the application of what has been learned through the video. So that's something that is really, really important, is just understanding that you're doing this whole flip model, creating these videos for the purpose of creating a student-centered learning environment when students come to class. So some benefits of flipped instruction, if we haven't convinced you enough already, to make the switch. These are just a couple that we identified. Differentiation. When you are trying to instruct all students at the same time, it's really hard to differentiate. We try to incorporate things like universal design for learning, that we're trying to incorporate those different learning needs into the group instruction. And then even trying to go in and do some of that individualized instruction when there's time. But there really isn't a whole lot of time to do that. And often you need to ask students to come in, maybe before or after class. With flipped instruction, the direct instruction is happening through video. And so that frees up your time in class to move around and work with the students individually. And so those students that need some additional support, you now have the time to provide that. And speaking about talking to every kid, since you now have that time that you're freed up, that you're more that guide on the side, you now have time to talk to every student in every class every day. And that's something that I don't think that we're able to do in a traditional model. And then reflecting back on my teaching practices, when I would try to do an activity where I talked to every student in every class every day, it took the entire hour to do that. And I had to make sure that the students had something to do during that time. In a flipped model, students are able to watch the instruction through video, practice, apply what they learn, and even go through assessments all on their own. And so for you as the instructor, you are there to provide that additional support and be able to talk to those kids, see where they're at in their learning. And that kind of ties into the third bullet of more engaging activities and assessments. So you have the time in class again, and this all comes down to time. Is that you have more time in class, so now you can do more with that class time and create some more activities that are more engaging. So you have, again, thinking back to my science experience, this would have given me more time to incorporate labs in my classroom, and that students could actually be doing those labs, and it'd be less of me doing maybe a demonstration of a lab up in the front of the classroom. And assessment too, I want to talk about. Since you have more time in class, you now have more time for assessments. So you can assess where students are with their learning. And I don't really mean, giving more tests. I'm thinking more about those formative assessments to see where students are at during the learning process. So you can do those types of assessments just by having a conversation with students, or even introducing some more formative assessments using maybe like bell ringers, or using like Socrative is an online assessment tool that you could be using with students. So that's just a thought there. And then this last piece is no gaps and no place to hide. So students move through the instruction at their own pace. So there's no gaps in the learning. If the student doesn't understand something, they can rewind and watch again, or you are available now for that extra support during class. And then no place to hide. I think about when I was teaching, there was always, that student or those groups of students that were, sitting in the back of the classroom, and they would just kind of try to pretend that they weren't there because they didn't want to interact with you. They didn't want to answer any questions that you might have for them. They kind of want to just go for the ride. And with this type of model, students can't do that because they're an active participant in the learning. So these are all some good benefits of flipped instruction. Now I want to talk about some of the myths. So with flipped instruction, people think it's all about the videos. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case. The videos are really the least important piece of flipped instruction. The videos really only exist so that you can have that class time to do the types of activities you want students to be doing. Okay, remember, it's all about creating that student-centered learning environment, and the videos just help you get there. People believe that flipped instruction relies on homework. That's not the case. Homework is an option, but it doesn't have